Welcome to Life Stories, where we share heartfelt tales of love, loss, and the power of second chances. Today's story is about Ryan, a millionaire who seemed to have it all: success, wealth, and ambition, but one surprise at his wedding changed everything. What started as a plan for revenge against his ex-girlfriend, Emma, turned into a journey of rediscovery when she arrived with two boys who looked exactly like him. What happens when the past collides with the present, forcing Ryan to confront the truth about love, family, and the life he truly wants? Stay tuned. And don't forget to like and subscribe to follow today's story. The sun was setting over the city, casting its warm, golden light on the glass windows of my penthouse. I sat on the balcony, sipping whiskey. A view of my empire stretched out below me. People said I had it all: money, power, and success. But as I sat there, I couldn't shake the bitterness that had settled deep in my chest. It wasn't the accolades, the business deals, or even the upcoming wedding that occupied my mind. It was her, Emma Brooks, the woman who had once meant everything to me. Her name was like a ghost in my head, haunting me at the most unexpected moments. I thought about her smile, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her dreams, and the nights we spent planning a future together, a future that never came to pass. Emma had walked away from me 8 years ago, leaving a letter that shattered me into pieces. And now, as I prepared for what should have been the happiest day of my life, I found myself consumed by a desire I couldn't control: revenge. It wasn't just about the heartbreak, though that had been bad enough. It was the fact that she'd left me at my lowest, when I was barely scraping by, trying to build something out of nothing. She didn't believe in me, not enough. Anyway. And now, I wanted her to see what she had walked away from. I wanted her to see the man I'd become. The man who didn't need her anymore. Mariana, I said, calling for my personal assistant. Mariana had worked for me for years. She was sharp, efficient, and never asked questions she wasn't supposed to. "Yes, Mr. Taylor," she answered over the phone, her tone calm and professional as always. "I need you to send a special invitation," I said, leaning back in my chair and staring out at the skyline. "Emma Brooks. Make sure it's delivered personally. I want her there. Front row." Mariana didn't skip a beat. "Understood. I'll handle it." I hung up the phone and took another sip of whiskey, the fiery liquid burning its way down my throat. I imagined Emma opening the invitation, her hands trembling as she read the words. Would she be surprised? Shocked? I wanted her to feel the weight of it, to know that this wasn't just a wedding, it was a reminder of everything she had walked away from. In the days that followed, the wedding preparations consumed most of my time. Every detail was perfect, down to the flowers imported from Holland and the bespoke suits tailored in Italy. The wedding would take place on a private island, a paradise where the rich and powerful would gather to celebrate my triumph. It was a spectacle, a display of the success I had worked so hard to achieve. But underneath it all, I couldn't shake the gnawing feeling in my chest. The truth was, I didn't just want to humiliate Emma. I wanted to understand. Why had she left me? Why had she given up on us? And why, after all these years, did I still feel like there was a piece of me missing? It wasn't long before Mariana confirmed that the invitation had been delivered. She accepted. "Mr. Taylor," she said. "She'll be there." For a moment, I felt a flicker of satisfaction. She was coming. The stage was set. But as the days passed, that satisfaction turned into something else, something I couldn't quite name. Late one evening, I found myself alone in the penthouse, the silence almost deafening. I poured myself another drink and sat down on the leather sofa, memories of Emma flooding my mind. We had met in a small cafe, back when I was just a struggling architect with big dreams and empty pockets. Emma worked there as a barista, her laugh as bright and warm as the sun streaming through the windows. It was love at first sight. She believed in me in a way no one else ever had. She'd sit with me after her shifts, listening to my ideas and telling me I was destined for greatness. "You're going to change the world, Ryan," she'd say, her eyes sparkling with hope. We dreamed together, planned a life where we'd both achieve our goals. She wanted to be a doctor, to help people, and I wanted to design buildings that would stand as monuments to human ingenuity. We didn't have much, but we had each other. And for a while, that was enough. But reality has a way of crushing even the strongest dreams. My projects kept getting rejected, one after another. The bills piled up. I began to feel like a failure, like I wasn't enough for her. "You deserve more than this, Emma," I told her one night after yet another rejection. "I don't care about the money, Ryan," she'd said, taking my hands in hers. "I believe in you. I believe in us." But I didn't believe in myself. The doubt crept in, eating away at me, and I started to pull away. I told myself it was for her own good, that she didn't deserve to be dragged down by my failures. And then one day, she was gone. She left me a letter, saying she needed to follow her own path, that she couldn't wait for a future that felt so far away. I read that letter so many times. The words etched into my memory, and each time, the pain felt fresh, like a wound that refused to heal. Now, as I stared out at the city I'd conquered, I wondered if that pain had ever truly gone away. Sure, I had buried it beneath layers of success and ambition. But the memories of Emma were still there, like a shadow I couldn't escape. "Does she ever think about me?" I whispered to myself, my voice barely audible. "Does she ever regret leaving?" I shook my head, trying to push the thoughts away. This wasn't about love. It was about revenge. Or at least, that's what I kept telling myself. The wedding day was approaching, and the preparations were nearly complete. Guests from all over the world were flying in: business tycoons, celebrities, politicians. It was everything I had ever wanted. But as I stood in my penthouse, overlooking the city, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. The truth was, no amount of money or power could fill the void Emma had left behind. And as much as I wanted to believe that this wedding would be the ultimate victory, a part of me couldn't help but wonder if it was all just an elaborate facade. I closed my eyes, the memories of Emma's laughter ringing in my ears. She was coming. And soon, I'd have my chance to face her, to show her the man I had become. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just about her seeing me. It was about me seeing her, about finally confronting the past I had tried so hard to forget. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I sat alone in the growing darkness, the weight of my emotions pressing down on me. The stage was set, but I wasn't sure if I was ready for the curtain to rise. The day of the wedding dawned bright and clear, the sun casting a golden glow over the private island. Everything was perfect: the immaculate decorations, the sound of soft classical music floating through the air, the scent of fresh flowers imported from every corner of the world. Guests mingled, laughing and sipping champagne, their designer outfits gleaming in the sunlight. It was the kind of spectacle people would talk about for years, the pinnacle of luxury and success. And yet, I could barely focus on any of it. I stood near the altar, pretending to listen as friends and business partners congratulated me on what they called a perfect celebration. But my mind was somewhere else, on the boat cutting through the calm waters, approaching the shore. It wasn't just any boat. Emma was on it. She was coming. I told myself I was prepared for this moment. I'd played it over and over in my mind, imagining her face when she saw me, the man she'd left behind, now standing as a symbol of triumph. Would she be surprised? Ashamed? Regretful? I wanted to see it all, the raw emotions on her face, the realization of everything she had walked away from. But as the boat came closer, a knot of unease began to tighten in my chest. I had spent years convincing myself that I had moved on, that my success had erased the pain of her leaving. Yet here I was, my pulse quickening, my hands trembling slightly as I watched her step onto the dock. She was just as I remembered her, yet somehow different. Emma walked with the same quiet confidence, her elegant black dress flowing in the breeze, her hair catching the sunlight. But there was a maturity to her now, a depth in her eyes that hadn't been there before. For a moment, I felt something I hadn't expected: admiration. She looked composed, like someone who had faced her own struggles and come out stronger. And then I saw them. 2 boys stepped off the boat behind her, their laughter ringing out as they ran ahead of her toward the sand. My breath caught in my throat. They couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 years old, their small faces glowing with excitement. But it wasn't their laughter or their energy that froze me in place. It was their faces. They looked exactly like me. The resemblance was undeniable: the dark brown eyes, the same sharp features, even the mischievous smile that played on their lips. It was like looking at a younger version of myself, split into 2. My chest tightened as the realization hit me like a freight train. These boys weren't just any children. They were mine. I stood there, rooted to the spot, unable to process what I was seeing. The noise of the party faded into the background, the laughter and music replaced by the pounding of my heart. How was this possible? How could Emma have kept something like this from me? "Ryan," a voice said, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was Daniel, my best man, standing beside me with a look of concern. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," I lied, my voice hollow. I couldn't take my eyes off the boys as they ran along the shore, their carefree laughter contrasting sharply with the storm raging inside me. Emma approached, her movements slow and deliberate, as though she were bracing herself for what was about to happen. She stopped a few feet away from me, her expression calm but guarded. "Hello, Ryan," she said, her voice steady. For a moment, I couldn't speak. My eyes darted between her and the boys, my mind spinning with questions I didn't know how to ask. Finally, I managed to find my voice. "Who are they?" I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. Emma glanced at the boys, who were now playing in the sand, before meeting my gaze. "Their names are Jack and Liam," she said quietly. "They're your sons." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stared at her, disbelief and anger swirling inside me. "My sons," I repeated, my voice rising. "You mean to tell me I've had children for 7 years and you never thought to tell me?" Emma didn't flinch, her calm exterior unshaken by my outburst. "I tried, Ryan," she said, her tone firm but tinged with sadness. "I reached out to you, but you were too busy. You didn't respond to my calls, my messages. You were building your career. And I didn't want to force myself into a life where I wasn't welcome." Her words stung, but I couldn't let go of the anger bubbling inside me. "That doesn't excuse keeping them from me," I shot back. "I had a right to know." Emma's calm facade cracked for just a moment, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "And what would you have done, Ryan?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Would you have dropped everything for them? Or would you have resented me? Resented them? For disrupting your plans?" I opened my mouth to respond, but the words wouldn't come. The truth was, I didn't know what I would have done. At the time, I had been so consumed by my ambitions, so focused on proving myself to the world, that I had shut out everything else. I made the best decision I could with the information I had. Emma continued, her voice soft but resolute. "And I've done everything I could to give them a good life. They're happy, Ryan. They're loved. That's what matters." I looked at her, my anger slowly giving way to something else: guilt, regret, a sense of loss I couldn't put into words. My gaze shifted to Jack and Liam, who were now chasing each other across the sand, their laughter filling the air. They were happy. They were loved. But I wasn't a part of that. I had spent so long convincing myself that success would fill the void Emma had left behind. But now, standing there on the edge of the perfect life I had built, I realized how empty it all felt. I had missed so much: first words, first steps, first smiles. And now, I wasn't sure if I'd ever be able to make up for it. Emma must have sensed my turmoil because she stepped closer, her voice gentle. "I didn't come here to hurt you, Ryan," she said. "But you deserve to know them. And they deserve to know you. If you're willing to try, we can figure this out together." Her words hung in the air, a fragile offer of hope amidst the chaos in my mind. For the first time in years, I felt the weight of my choices pressing down on me, the realization that success meant nothing without someone to share it with. I didn't know what the future would hold, but as I watched Jack and Liam laugh and play, I knew one thing for certain: I couldn't walk away again. The party continued in full swing around us. A sea of laughter, clinking champagne glasses, and soft music carried by the ocean breeze. Yet, I felt entirely disconnected from it all. My gaze remained fixed on Emma and the two boys playing on the sand, their laughter light and carefree, as though they hadn't just turned my world upside down. I stood there in silence, my emotions tangled into a knot I couldn't unravel. Anger, guilt, regret, and even a flicker of something I wasn't ready to call hope, they all churned inside me. 7 years. 7 years of their lives I had missed. Birthday parties, scraped knees, late-night stories. 7 years where I wasn't there to teach them, to guide them, to simply love them. It wasn't just the time that hurt, it was the realization of what I had lost without ever knowing it existed. Emma stood beside me, silent, her hands clasped in front of her as she watched them too. The tension between us was palpable. She seemed calm on the surface, but I knew her too well to miss the worry in her eyes. She was bracing herself for whatever I was going to say next. I wasn't even sure what I was going to say. Finally, I spoke, my voice low and unsteady. "How could you, Emma?" She turned to look at me, her face a mixture of guilt and resolve. "Ryan, No," I interrupted, unable to keep the bitterness from my tone. "You don't just get to show up at my wedding with 2 children, our children, and expect me to act like this is normal. I've missed everything. Do you understand that? Everything." Her lips tightened, and I could see her struggling to hold back her own emotions. "Do you think I wanted it to be like this?" she asked, her voice sharp but not unkind. "Do you think I wanted to raise them on my own? Without you?" I tried. "Ryan." I reached out. "But every time I called, every time I tried to talk to you, you were too busy, too focused on your career. You made it clear where your priorities were." Her words stung because they were true. I had shut everyone out during those years, so consumed by the need to prove myself that I hadn't left room for anything or anyone else. But knowing that didn't make this any easier to accept. "You should have tried harder," I said, my voice cold, even as I hated myself for saying it. Emma's expression hardened, a spark of anger flashing in her eyes. "I had 2 newborns to take care of, Ryan. I didn't have the luxury of waiting for you to decide you were ready to be a father. I did what I had to do to protect them, to give them a stable life. If you want to blame me for that, fine. But don't you dare pretend I didn't try." Her words cut through my defenses like a blade. I turned away from her, running a hand through my hair as I tried to process everything. She was right. I knew she was right. But the weight of it all, the choices I had made, the opportunities one had missed, it felt unbearable. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore filled the silence between us. In the distance, Jack and Liam were building a sandcastle, their heads bent in concentration. It was such a simple, ordinary moment, and yet it felt monumental to me. Those boys were mine, my sons. I turned back to Emma, my voice softer now. "Why did you come here, Emma? Was it just to tell me about them? To ruin my wedding?" Her expression softened too, and I saw the flicker of sadness in her eyes. "No, Ryan," she said quietly. I came because they deserve to know who their father is. They've asked about you. You know. They've seen pictures of you online. Heard me talk about you. I didn't want them to grow up wondering why their dad wasn't in their life. But I also needed to know if you even wanted to be a part of their lives. If you didn't, I would have left after today and never looked back. I felt a lump form in my throat at her words. She was giving me a choice. A chance to step up. To make things right. But I didn't know if I deserved it. They don't know, do they? I asked. That I'm their father. She shook her head. Not yet. I wanted you to decide what kind of relationship you wanted with them before I told them. If you weren't ready, I wasn't going to confuse them. The thought of those boys growing up without knowing me, without knowing the truth, made my chest ache. And yet, I couldn't ignore the doubt gnawing at the edges of my mind. Could I really do this? Could I be the father they needed? Ryan, Emma said, her voice breaking through my thoughts. I'm not asking you to decide everything right now. I know this is a lot to take in. But those boys are incredible. They're smart and kind and full of life. They've grown up without you. But they deserve to have you in their lives if you're willing to try. Her words hung in the air, and I felt the weight of them pressing down on me. She wasn't demanding anything. She wasn't asking for forgiveness or trying to rekindle what we had lost. She was just giving me a choice, a chance to be the father I should have been all along. I looked back at the boys. At the way their laughter carried over the sound of the waves. And something inside me shifted. I wasn't sure if I could make up for the years I had missed. But I knew one thing for certain, I couldn't walk away. I want to meet them, I said finally. My voice steady but soft. I want to be in their lives. Emma. I don't know how. And I don't know if I'll be any good at it. But I want to try. Emma's eyes softened. And for the first time, I saw a glimmer of relief. That's all I needed to hear, she said. The weight on my chest lifted slightly. Though I knew this was just the beginning. There was so much to figure out. So much to rebuild. But as I watched Jack and Liam run toward us, their faces lit up with joy. I felt something I hadn't felt in years, hope. As Jack and Liam ran toward us, their small feet kicking up sand and their laughter filling the air, I felt an unfamiliar mix of emotions, anticipation, fear, and something that might have been excitement. I wasn't sure what to do, what to say. I had spent years navigating business deals, making decisions worth millions of dollars without hesitation. But this moment, facing two small boys who were unknowingly about to turn my world upside down, felt like the most difficult task I had ever faced. Jack was the first to reach us. His cheeks flushed from running. He was carrying a piece of driftwood that he held out proudly. Look what I found, he announced. His voice filled with the unrestrained joy of a child. Liam followed close behind. Quieter but with the same curious eyes that mirrored mine. I crouched down to their level. My heart racing as I forced a smile. That's a great piece of wood, I said. My voice steadier than I felt. What are you going to do with it? We're building a boat, Jack declared. His chest puffed out with pride. A pirate ship. Liam's helping me. Liam gave a shy nod. His small hands clutching a handful of seashells. It's going to be the best ship ever, he said softly. His voice barely above a whisper. I didn't know what to say. These boys, my sons, were standing right in front of me, full of life and imagination. And I felt like a stranger in their world. I wanted to reach out, to tell them who I was. But the words caught in my throat. How do you introduce yourself as a father to children who don't even know you exist? They've been working on that boat for the past hour, Emma said, her voice breaking the silence. She knelt beside me, her presence grounding me in the moment. They're very determined when they set their minds to something. I glanced at her, searching her face for reassurance, and found it in the soft smile she gave me. She wasn't pushing me, wasn't forcing me to jump into a role I didn't know how to fill. She was giving me the space to figure it out on my own. I turned back to the boys, my heart aching with the realization of how much I had already missed. Do you think there's room on your pirate ship for one more? I asked. My voice lighter now. Jack's eyes lit up. And he nodded enthusiastically. Yeah. You can help us. We need someone to tie the sails. Liam looked up at me, his expression thoughtful. Do you know how to tie knots? He asked, his tone serious. I couldn't help but smile at his earnestness. I think I can manage, I said. But you'll have to teach me if I get it wrong. That seemed to satisfy him. And he gave me a small, shy smile before running back toward the sandcastle where their pirate ship was taking shape. Jack followed, waving for me to come along. I hesitated for a moment. Glancing at Emma. She nodded. Her eyes warm. Go, she said softly. They'll love having you there. I stood up, brushing the sand off my hands, and followed the boys. As I knelt beside them, watching Jack dig a trench for the ship's hull and Liam carefully arrange his seashells, I felt a strange sense of calm. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about work, about deals or deadlines or how to prove myself. All that mattered in that moment was the sound of their laughter and the feeling of being there with them. I wasn't sure how long we spent on the beach, but by the time the boys were finished, their pirate ship was a masterpiece of imagination, a pile of sand, driftwood, and seashells that they declared ready to sail the seas. Jack stood proudly beside it, his hands on his hips. We're the best pirates ever, he announced. You definitely are, I said, my smile genuine. No one else could build a ship like this. Liam looked up at me, his brown eyes serious. You're really good at helping, he said. You can be part of our crew. The simplicity of his words hit me harder than I expected. For all their innocence, there was a depth to their acceptance, a willingness to include me without question. It was humbling in a way I couldn't describe. Emma joined us then, carrying a bag with snacks and water. Pirates need to eat, she said, handing each of the boys a small sandwich. They took their food and sat in the sand, their earlier energy replaced by the quiet focus of hungry children. I sat beside Emma, the weight of the day settling over me. They're amazing, I said quietly, my gaze fixed on the boys. You've done such a good job with them. She glanced at me, a hint of surprise in her eyes. Thank you, she said softly. But they deserve to have both parents in their lives. Ryan. They deserve to know you. I nodded, my throat tight. I don't even know where to start. Emma. I don't know how to be what they need. You don't have to have all the answers right now, she said. Just show up. Be there. The rest will come with time. Her words stayed with me as the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting the beach in a soft orange glow. I didn't know what the future would hold or how I would fit into their lives. But for the first time in years, I felt like I had a purpose beyond my career. I wasn't just Ryan Taylor, the millionaire businessman. I was a father. And as I watched Jack and Liam share a quiet moment of laughter, I realized I wanted nothing more than to be worthy of that title. The sun began to set on the horizon, painting the sky with hues of pink and orange. The soft waves of the ocean gently rolled onto the shore, and the once bustling party was starting to quiet down as the guests moved toward the main venue for dinner. But for me, the world had narrowed down to this one moment, watching Jack and Liam finish their snacks while Emma sat quietly beside me. I couldn't stop staring at them. Every movement, every smile, every laugh felt like a revelation. They weren't just children, they were my children, my sons. And the weight of that truth was only starting to sink in. For years, I had defined myself by my career, by the empire I had built. I thought success would be enough to fill the void Emma had left. But now, seeing Jack and Liam, hearing their laughter and feeling the ease with which they accepted me into their world, I realized how hollow my achievements really were. Do they know anything about me? I asked, breaking the silence. My voice was low, almost hesitant, as if I was afraid of the answer. Emma turned her gaze toward me, her expression soft but serious. They know you're their dad, she said simply, but I've never gone into detail. They've asked about you. Of course. Where you are. Why you're not with us. I always told them the truth, or at least the version of the truth I thought they could understand. And what version is that? I asked. My throat tightening. She sighed. Looking back at the boys, who were now drawing shapes in the sand with sticks. That you're a good man who had to work far away. That you were building something important. I didn't want them to think badly of you, Ryan. I didn't want them to feel like they weren't enough. Her words hit me harder than I expected. Despite everything. Despite the years of distance and my failure to be there, Emma had protected me in their eyes. She had made sure they thought of me as someone they could admire. Someone they could one day be proud of. I didn't know how to respond. So I just nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. They're great kids, I said after a moment. My voice quieter now. You've done an incredible job, Emma. I mean it. She smiled. But there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. Thank you. But they've always been curious about you. They've always wanted to know more. That's part of why I came here today. They deserve to have you in their lives, Ryan. They deserve to know the whole truth. The truth. I echoed. The word heavy in my mind. I looked at Jack and Liam, wondering how I could explain my absence. How I could make up for years I had missed. I wasn't sure it was even possible. Jack suddenly bounded over, interrupting my thoughts. Mom, can we go to the big house now? He asked, pointing toward the main venue where the rest of the party was gathering. I wanna see the cake. Emma chuckled, ruffling his hair. Of course. Sweetheart. We'll go in a minute. Liam joined him, clutching the driftwood from their earlier pirate ship project. He looked up at me, his big brown eyes filled with curiosity. Are you coming too? He asked, his voice small but full of hope. It was such a simple question, but it carried so much weight. I nodded, forcing a smile. Yeah, I'm coming. The walk to the main venue was quiet, the boys running ahead while Emma and I followed behind. The grand hall was as extravagant as I had planned, crystal chandeliers, elegantly arranged flowers, and tables set with fine china. The guests were already seated, waiting for the meal to begin, but I barely noticed any of it. My attention was focused entirely on Jack and Liam as they marveled at the decorations, their excitement palpable. The boys were soon swept up by the energy of the party, and Emma let them wander a little. Knowing they wouldn't stray far, we found a quieter corner to sit, away from the noise and chaos. What now, Emma? I asked, the question heavy with uncertainty. I want to be in their lives, but I don't even know where to start. How do I do this? Emma looked at me, her expression thoughtful. You start by showing up, Ryan. That's all they need right now. They don't care about the past, about what you missed. All they care about is whether you're here now. Her words were simple, but they carried a wisdom I couldn't deny. I had spent so much time agonizing over what I had lost, over the mistakes I had made, that I hadn't even considered the possibility of moving forward. Jack and Liam didn't need a perfect father. They just needed me. I'll do whatever it takes, I said, my voice firm. I don't know how, but I'll figure it out. I want to be there for them. Emma. For you too. She smiled. A genuine smile that lit up her face in a way I hadn't seen in years. I believe you, Ryan. And I'll help you. But this isn't just about me. It's about them. They're the ones who matter most. As the evening wore on, I watched Jack and Liam interact with the guests. Their laughter and energy infectious. I felt a sense of pride I hadn't expected. A warmth that filled the empty spaces inside me. They were my sons. And for the first time, I felt like I could be the father they deserved. When it was finally time to cut the cake, the boys insisted on helping. They stood on either side of me, their small hands clutching mine as we held the knife together. The room erupted in applause as we made the first cut. But all I could hear was the sound of their laughter. It was a moment I would never forget, a moment that marked the beginning of something new. As the night drew to a close, I found myself sitting alone on the balcony outside the venue. The ocean stretching out endlessly before me. Emma joined me, sitting quietly by my side. For a while, neither of us spoke. The silence between us comfortable. "Do you think they'll forgive me?" I asked eventually, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked at me, her expression gentle. "They already have. Ryan. All they want is for you to be there. The rest doesn't matter." I nodded, the weight in my chest lifting slightly. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a chance to make things right. And I wasn't going to waste it. The days after the wedding were unlike anything I had ever experienced. The life I had meticulously crafted, built brick by brick through years of ambition and sacrifice, felt like it had been flipped on its head. My priorities were shifting. And though it scared me, it also felt undeniably right. For the first time in years, my focus wasn't on business meetings, investments, or the endless chase for success. It was on two small boys with boundless energy and an unrelenting curiosity about the world. Jack and Liam. It still felt surreal to say their names and know they were mine. In the days following the wedding, I invited Emma and the boys to stay at the island villa for a few extra days. It wasn't something I had planned, but I wanted to spend more time with them, to figure out where I stood in their lives and how I could start building the relationship I had missed out on for so many years. To my relief, Emma agreed. And soon, we were navigating an unfamiliar but strangely comforting rhythm together. The first morning was chaotic in the best way possible. I had barely finished my coffee when Jack burst into the kitchen, dragging Liam behind him. "Ryan," he called. He hadn't started calling me Dad yet. And I wasn't sure if I was ready for that. "We want to go exploring. There's a path in the woods by the beach. Can we go?" Liam looked up at me, quieter but just as hopeful. "Mom said it's safe," he added softly, as though trying to make a case for their adventure. I glanced at Emma, who was leaning against the counter with a cup of tea. She smiled and shrugged. "It's your call." "All right," I said, standing up and setting my mug down. "But only if I come with you." The boys cheered, their excitement contagious. Before I knew it, we were out on the trail, the boys running ahead while I tried to keep up. Jack was full of questions about the trees, the birds, even the clouds. Liam stayed closer to me, his small hand occasionally brushing against mine as he pointed out interesting rocks or shells along the path. It was a simple morning, but it was also one of the most meaningful experiences of my life. As we reached the beach at the end of the trail, Jack ran toward the water, shouting something about being a pirate captain. Liam lingered beside me, watching his brother with a quiet smile. "Do you think pirates still exist?" he asked, his voice filled with the kind of wonder only a child could possess. I chuckled, kneeling down beside him. "Not the way they used to. But maybe there are still a few out there, hiding on secret islands." His eyes widened, and he looked back toward the ocean as though expecting to see a pirate ship on the horizon. "Do you think they'd let us join their crew?" "Only if you're brave enough," I said with a smile. "I am," he replied confidently. "Jack is too." The simplicity of his answer struck me. These boys didn't need me to be perfect, they just needed me to be present. And in that moment, I realized that being a father wasn't about grand gestures or fixing the past, it was about moments like this. About being there to answer their questions, to share their wonder, to make them feel seen and loved. Later that evening, as the boys settled into bed after a day full of exploring, Emma and I found ourselves sitting on the porch again. The villa was quiet except for the distant sound of waves and the occasional chirping of crickets. It felt peaceful. But there was still an unspoken tension between us, a lingering weight from everything that had gone unsaid. "I've been thinking," I began, breaking the silence, "about what you said at the wedding. About showing up." Emma turned to look at me, her expression calm but curious. "You were right," I admitted. I spent so many years chasing success, convincing myself it was the only thing that mattered. And I lost so much because of it. But I don't want to lose anything else. Emma. I want to be in their lives, fully. Not just as someone who visits now and then, but as their father. As someone they can count on. She didn't respond right away, her gaze shifting to the horizon where the moonlight danced on the water. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. They've been waiting for you, Ryan. They don't know it. But they've been waiting. And I've been waiting too. I didn't know if you'd ever come back into our lives. But I'm glad you're here now. Her words, simple as they were, carried a weight that settled deep in my chest. I had been so afraid of facing the truth, of admitting my failures, that I hadn't allowed myself to imagine a different future. But now, sitting beside Emma and thinking about the boys asleep inside, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: hope. I know I can't make up for the time I've missed, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But I promise you, Emma, I'm going to try. For them. For you. She looked at me then, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, and gave me a small, hopeful smile. That's all I need to hear. The next few days passed in a blur of laughter and small moments that felt impossibly big. Building sandcastles on the beach, sharing meals around the table, reading bedtime stories while Jack and Liam fought to keep their eyes open. It was all new to me. But it felt natural in a way I hadn't expected. I could feel the walls I had built around myself slowly coming down, piece by piece, with every smile and every laugh. On our last evening at the villa, as we watched the sunset together, Jack climbed onto my lap, his small hands clutching my arm. You'll come see us, right? He asked, his voice filled with the kind of innocence that made my chest ache. I wrapped my arms around him, holding him close. I'll do more than that, I said. You're stuck with me now. He giggled. And Liam joined in, leaning against my side. Emma watched us with a smile, her eyes shining with a mixture of happiness and relief. In that moment, I realized that my life wasn't about the empire I had built or the success I had achieved. It was about the family I had found. And for the first time, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold, I sat on the porch of the villa, watching Jack and Liam chase each other on the beach. Their laughter echoed through the evening air, filling my heart in a way no amount of success or wealth ever could. Emma sat beside me, her presence calm and reassuring. We weren't perfect, our journey had been full of mistakes and missed chances, but we had found our way back to each other and to something far greater, a family. In that moment, I realized that true happiness wasn't in the achievements I had once chased so fiercely. It was here, in the laughter of my children, the warmth of Emma's smile, and the promise of a future filled with love and second chances. Did you enjoy today's story? Don't forget to like, subscribe to Life Stories, and stay tuned for more heartfelt tales.